Welcome to the CEO's Heart for Service, where leaders of exceptional B2B businesses work together to answer this question: how do you scale your services without compromising your client experience or the core values that drive them? I'm your host, Matt Wolf. Join us as B2B leaders share hard-won insights and field-tested strategies for the tightrope walk between integrity and growth. We'll find our balance and the way forward together. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the CEO's Heart for Service. I am your host, Matt Wolf, partner at Brand 3, and we've got a new co-host today. This is Holland Kaiser's first time on the podcast. Welcome, Holland.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's lovely to be here.
It's lovely to have you here. Holland is one of our project managers, but she is oh so much more. She's just returned to the team, and as she did, as they say in Monty Python, there was a great rejoicing. Everyone was so happy to have her back, and Holland and I are just starting to uncover that we both have a really strong theater background. We are both theater geeks, theater nerds. Turns out our guest loves theater too, so that's going to come up today. What else is going to come up today, Holland? What did you take? This was a great conversation with George Sandmann, who's the founder, CEO of GrowthDrive. They are helping financial advisors do a far better job of helping their business clients grow and prepare eventually for a successful exit. What'd you take away from this, Holland?
What I really loved about what George said is just how relational he tries to make everything, from his peers to his advisors and to the people that those advisors help, which I think ties in so wonderfully to what Brand 3 really is all about, which is just making, discovering that brand, making that really allowing you to kind of let it speak for itself. It's because it is so powerful. So the way that George has really bought into that brand is everything and it affects your culture and your marketing. And it was just really exciting to hear how passionate he is about that.
Yeah, he definitely understands the power of having a very clear brand story in place, the story of who you are and who you serve and what that relationship looks like to drive growth in every possible way for the business, for the ways people are served, and for the culture they're building. That was really clear. The other thing I'm excited to hear him talk about, we'd always try and figure out how do you scale successfully, hold on to who you are. At its heart, George is a community builder. He's building a community of advisors and equipping them to do their job and have a greater impact for the people they serve. But for him, community is not a label. It's a reality. We said during this, that he's just not taking any shortcuts in making sure that there's really just no one left behind and everyone truly cared for, even as they scale. And that seems to be, although it sounds so simple, the often lost secret sauce of what he's doing. You're really going to enjoy this today. Let's go over and talk to George Sandmann. George, thanks for being here today.
Thanks a lot, Matt. I'm psyched to be here.
I am too. We had a great conversation earlier this week, and I've been looking forward to this all week to have the chance to reconnect and go further into this. It's called CEO's Heart for Service, and we are truly looking for people to talk to who have a heart for service, who care deeply about their clients and their success. And I know from having talked to you earlier, that is clearly you. So I'm just really looking forward to this. We're going to talk about the business and what you do in just a second. Sure. But we like to, the thing is, any B2B service that we encounter tends to be a highly relational, high stakes offer, and your example is perfect, right? Like, hey, why don't you let me help you plan a successful business exit from this thing that you spent decades working on, right? That is it's no small ask. It's no small amount of trust that people have to provide. So we are always looking for ways to make B2B marketing more relational, more human. So to that end, symbolically, we like to just ask a nice human question at the jump of this podcast. So the question is, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Because you probably didn't think about M&A and business exits when you were a kid. Like, where did you start and how far from the mark are we?
Yeah, it's so funny. That is a great question, Matt. Thank you very much. And Holland, great to see you. When I was maybe in second grade, and I was over at my friend Danny Clifton's house, and his father had a colleague in visiting, and the colleague was an attorney. I had no idea what an attorney was, but Danny looked up and said, "I want to be an attorney," and I stood there and I said, "I want to be an attorney," and I ended up in law school. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I grew up to be an attorney. I am an attorney, admitted at the Maryland bar, but that is not where I ended up. I started my first company and became an addict, and here we are 30 some odd years later.
You discovered your passion, found your thing.
That's exactly right.
Well, let's talk about the business for a minute. Holland, I'll let you take it away here.
Of course. Yeah. Well, let's just start with the basics. Tell us about you, what you do, who you serve.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's interesting, Matt, you mentioned exit a couple of minutes ago, and we certainly do work with a lot of exit planners, and I'm very, very passionate. So if we open up the aperture a little bit, what I'm most passionate about is I'm an entrepreneur, and I've watched some friends succeed. I've watched some friends flame out. I've had some very successful companies. I've flown a couple, one in particular, into the side of the mountain, and I've seen all the ripples of that, the impact that can have. I'm a profound capitalist, right? I believe in liberty. I believe in capitalism, but I'm also very caring. You know, what George Bush 1 might have called 1,000 points of light. I'd like to be one of those points of light. What are we trying to solve for? So it's not exit planning. What I'm really most passionate about is delivering client wins, right? And can I get into this, and can I geek out a little on some data?
Yeah.
Would that be okay? Okay.
Yeah, we're pretty geeky here.
Well, I'm a data geek. And when we look at the market, when we look at our national economy, we need to understand where jobs are created and where jobs need to be maintained. And jobs are created and need to be maintained in what I call the pre-middle market and the middle market. Businesses with gross annual revenues between $2.5 and $100 million. Depending on how you measure it, they're somewhere between 35 and 50, a little over 50% of our national GDP. They're $8 trillion in aggregate income. They have combined, these businesses just in the United States generate more GDP, right? They generate more revenue than the entire economies of Japan and Germany combined. This is an incredibly important part of our national and the global economy, right?
Wow.
Imagine something bad happening to the German economy and the ripple effects that would have. Well, if something bad, little rabbit ears, happens to these businesses, who's seen Ghostbusters? Would be bad, right? And that's what I wrote my book about.
Yeah.
And so that's 64% of new jobs. And what I care about the most is helping those businesses increase strategic capacity. And I'll get off my soapbox, but we need to make those businesses higher quality, more resilient, and better able to serve their owners, the people who are taking all the risk, right? Us, the entrepreneurs, and their stakeholders, the communities in which they exist. And I'll drop the mic there. Sorry, I'm super passionate on this one. I apologize, guys.
It's powerful, and I've never heard it framed that way. So I'm really grateful to understand that better. What are the actual services that you provide, George, within? Because there's quite a breadth, actually, of things that you're doing.
There is, let's just pick up that focus on that aspect of the economy, that part of the economy, and we're committed to impacting 10% of that part of the economy. Great. Well, how are we going to do that? Most of those business owners think they're fine, right? They're operating under they're kind of getting positive feedback, a great lifestyle. They work hard, right? They take a lot of risk. It's not easy, but generally speaking, they're happy people. The problem is their businesses need help. So what do we do? Where do we come to the table? I tried going straight to business owners with some massive brands behind us, right? Household name brands, and that went over badly. There was no traction. But what did get traction was the advisors to those businesses calling us and saying, hey man, my client showed me this thing. He wanted to know if you should get involved. Can I use that with my clients? So we've started working with advisors. What do? We provide knowledge development, education. We provide technology, and we provide very sophisticated support and a peer-to-peer support network. So everything that the market needs, right, that advisors need to deliver client wins. And I'd be happy to go through it in detail, but I don't want to turn this into an infomercial.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned that you became an addict, right?
Yeah.
What was the moment of addiction? What was the thing that caught you and gave you this sense of purpose that just sent you straight down this road?
I am fiercely independent, and I work well with others. I work a little less well for others, and so and that's just part of my personality, for better or for worse. I'm a high D, high I, if you know the disc.
Yeah.
So we started this first business, and it was a wild ride, and I was incredibly fortunate. We don't need to go down that that storyline. Happy to, but I got profound personal satisfaction. I loved the risk, I loved the Wild West, and I loved the reward. That business didn't end well, but for me personally, in terms of career development, it was absolutely magic, and that created the addiction. And I got invited by the CEO of the next company to work with him, and then the CEO of the next company. So I've been very, very fortunate to just get pulled from startup or growth company to startup or growth company. It's an addiction, and we can talk about the negative sides of that as well. It's not easy, and we all of us, you guys are entrepreneurs, right? We all have scars, and we all make sacrifices, and our families make sacrifices. So I don't want to make it sound glorious. It has its moments, but it's been an incredible career.
Yeah. So what I hear in that is you were addicted to helping people win. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And to changing markets and to creating new categories. And addiction, by the way, it has a negative connotation. I want to make sure that I don't, that's something we need to talk about openly.
It's true, and for people like us, business people with that heart for service, it can be really hard to figure out that line of when have I given too much? I forget what my disc thing is, but my Enneagram is 2. I'm the giver, so I'll just keep giving until someone smacks me upside the head and says, "Go hang out with your family."
We're gonna get along just fine, Matt.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. George, do you have if someone pinned you down to say what your job title is, how do you describe what you do?
I love making connections, right? So whether it's connections in data, that's fun, but I love making connections between people. And it's very fulfilling for me personally. It scratches an itch, and so I think if I have a superpower, it might be seeing trends and seeing like for like, or white for black, and needing to put the two together and making those connections. And that's ultimately what we have here is a community organized around helping private business owners.
Yeah, that tracks with me. Yeah, you've built this powerful community, still growing, of equipping advisors. Mm-hmm. I know just from having met you, understanding GrowthDrive a little better, you've got training going on. There's a conference that brings people together. There's just all kinds of things going on where you're building community. Let me touch, you're right, we don't want to do an infomercial, but I do want to touch high level just what a few of those things are that you mentioned. What's the technology piece?
Yeah, the technology is called Clarity, right? And it helps clients gain total clarity about what they're going to need to do to get the success they want. And that is a traditional software suite. It's a very sophisticated software suite. And it helps a business owner, the CEO, go through, it's almost a self-discovery. It's discovery about their business. It's so much of our business is ourselves. So it's this self-discovery about where their business is strong, where it's weak. And fundamentally, what's different about my perspective is that we should be comparing these businesses not to themselves, but to the best-in-class businesses. And my book is called, Proven Strategies for Leading Businesses from Stuck to Best-in-Class. What does a best-in-class business look like? The software says, right, here's where you are. Here's what best-in-class looks like. And by the way, and this is the important part, we calculate a value for the business, and that value we then discount based on operational quality so that the CEO for the first time and uniquely gets a view of what their business should be worth in an M&A transaction, and we should talk about that, in an M&A transaction, post due diligence, right? And here's the price you're going to get, not the value. Here's the price. Someone is going to put a number on a check, and we predict that it's going to be somewhere in this neighborhood, right? This is for planning purposes only. I am an attorney, all the disclaimers. But that piece of technology is profound. And on top of that, we have now poured, if you imagine pouring AI into that topography, into that terrain, so that AI can do what, I hate the term artificial intelligence, but what well-designed additional technology can bring to the conversation.
That's excellent. It's so cool that you're providing that. George, when we talked the other day, I do want to capture this. You shared a really sort of harrowing stat in terms of M&As and exits about what people experience in that world. And I'd love to hear you share that again, because that was really eye-opening.
Well, there's this dark secret that none of us talk about. So what we run around, and the exit planning world runs around rightly, saying, hey, you ought to be looking at your business as an asset. You ought to be thinking about how to harvest, to do two things, right? What is profoundly important is that we create immortal businesses that are going to survive the founder, the founding generation, or any transition. And that is a very difficult thing to do. Now, we know that 19 out of 20 companies do not qualify to undergo to successfully complete an M&A transaction as they're currently run, right? They're not blacklisted, they're just as they're currently run. They just won't survive due diligence. And meaning the transaction will start, we'll run it, get out of the gate, and then be canceled by one side or the other. Then it gets worse. Only 20% of M&A transactions are successful. And we can talk about what successful means. I use a pretty broad lens. When I define success, I mean successful for the seller, right? That they get the value and personal satisfaction they want out of it. 75% end up, and this is according to EPI, the Exit Planning Institute, 75% of business owners who sell regret doing it. That's a failure. And on the other side, we have a failure of the private capital markets to hit their investment thesis and to deliver the ROI that their investors, private capital comes from somewhere, and to deliver the ROI that the investors anticipated. So there's failure at a lot of different levels. And here's something that not enough people are talking about. When we say prepare your business and then sell it, that is actually a bit of an untruth. Look how political I'm being. It's telling a little bit of an untruth because everybody's aware of the statistics I just shared, and there are $10 trillion worth of businesses that need to transition. That's the number most commonly cited. Some say 14. It's a big number. And there's $2 trillion of capital. There's $1 trillion of equity and $1 trillion of debt. I'm talking in rough numbers. A little heavier on the equity, a little lighter on the debt, but you get the picture. So we basically have a $10 trillion opportunity with a $2 trillion solution. So if we run around saying, hey, get your business ready to sell and then sell it to someone, we know that cannot happen. It is literally market impossible for that to happen. So then that begs a question. And I'll stop there. I'm happy to dive in. But that begs a big question. And this is where you can see my eyebrows going up and my blood pressure going up, because we need to address this. And I believe that we have created, described the path to doing this.
It's fantastic. I've got some other things to talk about here, but just briefly, so you're helping people who help people, which is amazing, equipping the advisors and help them do it better. If I was an advisor in that space, how would I know it's time to talk to George and find GrowthDrive and join this community?
If you are working with businesses, 2.5 million to 100 million, and there are a lot, if you look at the demographics, there are a lot of businesses in that 2.5 to 10, 2.5 to 20. That's where most of these businesses are statistically, and it's the first thing I start my book with is these statistics. You're going to want to call me if you're a wealth advisor, a CPA, a business advisor, a management consultant. We're getting an increasing number of customers who are private equity operators. If you want to make sure that a business or a portfolio of businesses are high quality, have maximized options for their owners, for their shareholders, then you should call us, because that is what we are in the business of delivering. We are in the business of, and we have a proven process for taking businesses, the average business, and we have thousands and thousands of businesses that have been analyzed by advisors, right? I'm not in the room. They're doing it bona fide with their clients. The average business has a strategic capacity score of 54.1. That's the mean, not the average, but the mean is 54.1. For a business to confidently contemplate an M&A transaction, it really needs to be as far above 70 as possible. And an asset class business, what we describe as the 85 plus strategic capacity asset class, or asset class businesses, those have a strategic capacity score of 85. And if you want to tell your client, hey man, stay at your desk, die at your desk, but harvest a bunch of wealth, high strategic capacity. Sell your business to a third party, high strategic capacity. Strategic capacity scores a business's ability, this is important, I'm going to slow it down, to predictably and sustainably grow profits and cash or free cash flow. The private capital markets, the money is looking for businesses that can predictably and sustainably grow free cash flow. And when we talk about exit, most exits are internal transfers where the owner becomes the bank. And if the owner is going to be the bank, don't you think they care about the fact that the business looking forward after they stop coming to their desk every day can predictably and sustainably grow free cash flow? That's what's going to pay the note. So it's a profound opportunity for business owners and for the advisors who work with them. This is the conversation you should be having. It's not a conversation about value. It's a conversation about options. It's a conversation about delivering the prosperity, the wealth for your family, prosperity for your community, and the legacy that every business owner hopes that they'll deliver.
That's great. I love that you look at it in such a holistic way. You think about family, community, all of the impact around that. And I'll just throw this word out there because we talked about this the other day. The thing you're really solving, along with the strategic capacity, the financial things, all of that, is heartbreak. The unbearable heartbreak of working your whole life and realizing that you have an unsellable asset is just unfathomable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
George, you've explained wonderfully how you deliver and how important it is for you to deliver exceptional service to your clients. Can you give us an example of one of those great relationships? You don't have to name names or provide anything too detailed, but give us an example of one of those experiences, a great relationship with a client. What made it work?
So that's a great question, Holland, and I want to make sure I answer the right question. Are you referring to a relationship with a business owner or a relationship with an advisor?
Ooh.
Most of our relationships are with the advisors.
Yeah.
Now, I do hear from them. We have thousands of cases, right? So I do hear from them, and I periodically hear from business owners themselves, and so I'd love to talk about that. And we need to remember that advisors are running advisory businesses. So everything that we teach, I just came back from a symposium that was led by my friend Mike Garrison. And in that symposium, you had 12 advisors working on their advisory businesses. I was lucky enough to be a fly on the wall. So what do these great relationships look like? Well, they look like, I'm going to take my friend Larry Prince. I'll use his name. He won't mind. He's just a great advisor. He's a great coach. He's one of the most wonderful humans you'll meet. But when Larry and I met, Larry was delivering a lot of value for his clients, and he was working with businesses more in the $1 million to $2 million space. Now, those businesses are great. I've built them myself. The challenge is that those business owners view the world through this perspective, right? They view the world through their wallet because they haven't liberated themselves from that. They have to have that mentality, right? I can either hire Holland or I can go on vacation. That's still the math they're doing. Larry has used our methodology and our process, and in fact, he now teaches in our certification program. But Larry has taken our methodology and our process, and he has grown his client set so that now he's working with several 100 million plus gross annual revenue businesses. What does that mean? Well, that means that he has multiplied his impact. GrowthDrive's vision, my personal vision, this is on my personal webpage, is to help $1 trillion of private businesses increase strategic capacity in what we call the 3 dimensions of business growth, right? So when Larry moves up the revenue demographic and he starts working with larger and larger businesses, he is contributing more and more to executing our vision. And we're going to hit our vision. I've set 2030 as the date. There's a lot of work ahead of us, but we're going to do it. And those are the types of relationships that we help advisors. They come to us, they're typically successful. They're typically not looking for new clients, but they end up evolving into more sophisticated opportunities because what we bring to the table and what it's hard to say invent because maybe you can say invent because the guy who invented the paperclip did not invent wire, right? He just invented a way to bend it that is more useful. And maybe I've invented this methodology and process, described it. I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable. But this methodology and process is demonstrated, proven to help business owners work with more and more gross annual revenue, and therefore help execute a vision that we have for the market. And I'll just leave it there. And there are a lot of stories like that. Some of them are household names. We have several big banks doing this work in their private wealth spaces. This is good stuff.
Yeah. So, well, you've grown a lot, and obviously that's we try to understand the businesses first in here, and then we want to dig into the growth story, because the main thesis, of course, of this podcast is when we've got people like you who care so much about, in your case, both the advisors and then the downline effect of all of that and the lives that they're impacting. As you grow, it gets harder and harder to maintain the quality of how you serve this community of advisors. It gets harder to stay true to your core values and just everything that makes you unique and powerful in what you do. So where have you seen some bumps in the road? What's been hard about scaling up along the way?
Careful, scaling up is another brand, and we are not attached to that in any way, shape, or form.
Great.
But I will say that we do have some of their advisors now in our community. Anyway, leave that alone. So the bumps along the way, it is hard. If you work with me, your phone is going to ring periodically, and it's just going to be me picking up the phone to call and see how you're doing, because I care. As we grow, it is hard. We've actually just expanded that, and I've had to delegate some of those calls to others. What matters is that the calls are made, that we ensure that people are getting the resources, the help, the feedback, the connections that they need. So that is just something about which to always be mindful. And it's frustrating when people forget. They get so busy in their work that they forget that there's this fantastic resource. And so we track engagement, and it's like, hey, I know you're working your tail off. Are you doing the best for yourself and therefore for your clients? And that's not an arrogant, please don't misunderstand that. But I am guilty as heck. I have to remind myself that answering email is not my job, right? We all have this whirlwind going on around us. So how do we maintain contact? How do we make sure that people are getting the value that they expect from this community? Those are the challenge points. And then, of course, we can shift that to AI and the impact it's having on all of us in so many different ways. But I think that's kind of the overarching. How do we maintain our high touch and continue to take care of people?
Yeah, I want to punch in on something you said there, because I don't think it's ever come up yet in our conversations. This idea that you're checking in with people to make sure they are using the tools, that gets missed so much. This world is littered with underutilized certifications and trainings that people had, with CRMs and software systems of all kinds, right, that got installed and were never fully utilized. And because they all involve a culture shift of some kind. They invite habit change, all of these things that are really hard to engage and change what you're doing. So to me, that's an incredibly important piece of what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's hard, right? We all do. I mean, we all have. One of the first things I had my Claude cowork do is go and find the things to which I'm subscribed that I've probably forgotten I even subscribe to, right? And you're right, making sure that people are getting the value. It's at the end of the day, people are, we can get commercial, they are buying something. And let's make sure that they're getting the value from what they're buying. And now what's interesting about what we do is there are many people in the community who, and I'll be the first to say a tool is a tool, right? Our tool happens to be fantastic. It's a game changer. However, it's just a tool. What matters more is what I describe as this integrated human to human and human machine bond that there is, right? Of advisors working together to move their client in a defined direction, that they're harnessing technology when appropriate to move the client in a specific direction. We describe that direction as strategic capacity. And by the way, strategic capacity, this isn't growing to drive value or growing to grow profits. A lot of business owners, 21% of business owners, just want their business to be easier to run. Does that resonate? Right? Mm-hmm. Hey, man, wouldn't it be great if, hey, Mark, thanks for calling. Listen, here's the one thing. If you can help me just work 40 hours a week, that I would consider that a win. That's 21% of CEOs. So,
Yeah.
saying that they should be looking at an exit, for example, is nonsense. That's not what they want. So how do we integrate people, high touch, human contact, bring technology to bear, ours, others, make sure it's being used, that it's being engaged in this process. AI, not AI for AI's sake. Don't get me started. Specific AI and data. A lot of what's being done out there is being done by gut, and that's great. However, it is far from perfect, right? We have a saying at my house, often wrong, but never in doubt. And I think that's true for all of us at points in time. And for business owners, if they're confidently wrong, that can have profound effects. So,
Yeah. When I think about, you're in a particular space here, particular business model in terms of building community, providing technology platforms along the way. But what I would say, what I'm hearing and sort of picking up on when we talk about scaling and growth is that what's been so key has just been the human thing, maintaining connections in the midst of that. And I think that gets lost a lot, right? A lot of people invent great tech platforms and they're like, this is a great thing for you. Good luck. Be on your way. And may God shine upon you. Like that's all they get.
exactly right.
And even communities, right? Like, welcome to the community. This is a great community. And 6 months later, people are like, am I in a community? So yeah, so just the fact that you're
And it's hard.
attentive to that.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on one other thing that kind of blew my mind the other day when we were talking, because I asked you, because you got technology platform, you've got training programs, certifications, conference, groups and things you're facilitating. And I said, George, how many people does it take to do all that as you have scaled and grown? And you said,
Yeah, we are a tiny giant. So I'm a big believer this is a gig economy. The short answer is two of us. The longer answer is this is a gig economy. And when I talk about, for example, our dev team is offshore. I love them. We have worked together for years. I really do. We have great close personal friendships. They don't happen to be my employees, but I am 100% of their take home, right? So there is a dedicated engineering team that is 5 at the core and then can expand as we have big pushes, as we do now. We're going to be unveiling a new UI UX, and which is crazy cool and is actually going to be transformative yet again. Anyway, but if you remember earlier, I said, and we provide sophisticated support. In a traditional model, that sophisticated support sounds like a call center, sounds like all sorts of stuff, people. And it is people, but what we've managed to do, we attract people who are makers, what I describe as makers. In fact, Elon Musk described as makers, and I love that. I called them givers, but it's really making. They make more value than they extract. And when you have a community of makers, it is natural for them. I have never had to say, hey, Mark, Holland needs help. Would you please reach out to her? Because Holland comes into the community and says, hi, I have X challenge, X opportunity. I need X resource. And you say, oh my gosh, I went through that just last week. So behind the scenes, we have this the community becomes its own. It's not self-help. It is this beautiful, very sophisticated member support system, which is far better than anything I could stand up. Could I put up together a call center? You bet I could. We've got the scripts. I've done that before. This is much better, a much better model for you, the user. You don't want to ask me. You don't want me at the middle of the spider's web. You want to ask the smartest valuation expert in the country about something your client said, something your client saw, or if they'll do the valuation for you, et cetera. So we are a tiny giant, and we are impacting an outside, very, very efficient. How's that?
Yeah, that's outstanding. There's community in label and there's community in reality, and you are doing the latter, which is a big part of the success.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, of course. I want to shift gears here a little bit. We're going to just dig in for a moment on some of the base components of what it takes to grow. Your brand, marketing, sales, client experience. that comes from our own philosophy, here at Brand 3. So we're working with B2B service providers. We find that so many of them gave up on marketing because it just never worked for them. They wasted inordinate amounts of time, heartbreaking amounts of time and money on marketing. There are a couple reasons for that, but chief among them is usually nobody took the time to sit down with them to figure out their brand strategy, which is simply, are you telling the right story to the right people? B2B is all about relationship, right? And so there is a story about who you are as a business, who your ideal client is, the people you are best suited to serve, and what does that relationship look like? There's a story that invites them into their own narrative and makes them feel heard and understood and curious to know more. It's the beginnings of a trusted relationship. And what's so cool is once you nail down that story, it has so many applications because it does fix, for lack of a better term right now, because it's Friday, it fixes marketing, but it also enhances how you do sales and the client experience at the entire client journey, the entire relationship. So that's how we approach things. So we like to talk about this from that angle. So the first thing I'm interested to understand is you're several years down the road with GrowthDrive. How is your understanding of just your brand story and how you talk about who you are evolved over time?
And it is evolved. It's funny. It's evolving in polish. It's not evolving in message. I got this vision. I've been pursuing this vision for years. And so we are in a different category, and it has become abundantly clear that it is a different category. We are unique in this category, and that it is a very impactful category. It takes a while, at least for me, to be like, you know what, we really have something here. And we are not like, so we get compared, let's talk about marketing, right? We get compared to value calculation, and those value calculation technologies they're good. They do a good job. They calculate a value for the business, but they don't make value actionable. And if you're not making value actionable, it's like me telling you that you have a hazy spot on your CT scan on your lung, and good luck. You're like, well, wait a second. You've just told me that I might be sick. So we need to, we told a CEO who thinks they're worth $20 million that they're worth 12, have a nice day. That's not how they do it, but at the end of the day, they don't make it actionable. We're in a category of strategic capacity. And strategic capacity drives growth. It drives value. Those are outputs of a business engine. So it's that growing awareness that we are in a category and that the category is real. And I'm a data guy, right? As we get proof, that is being baked into, I love you just touched on a few points. So from the way we describe the world, there are 24 gears inside a business engine. Those gears include sales. They include marketing. They include brand. They include culture. And I'm coming to the answer to your question. From my perspective, brand itself, now marketing is promoting brand, right? Brand is the outward manifestation of culture. Well, how do we create culture? And culture is not a ping pong table and pizza Fridays, right? Those are nice to have. A culture may not even be collegial, right? But it certainly is competitive and effective and gets things done. A good culture, and you know it. I walked into Bloomberg way back in the day. This is company number one, right? The addiction maker, my first hit on the crack pipe, and I'm keeping it light. But it was about that era. But we walked into Bloomberg, and they were on 2 floors, Midtown Manhattan, and you walked into that place, and it was a hive, man. It was buzzing. You instantly wanted to be part. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but I want some. And look what Bloomberg went on to get, because Mike Bloomberg nailed culture. It had a can-do, will-do, on fire. This is what we're doing, and we are the best in the world. And if you do that, notice in everything I just said, it doesn't matter if everybody likes each other. It does matter that they're getting it done for their customers, for their clients. And so when we talk about brand, it needs to be the outward manifestation of culture. Brand is really how the customer values your business. Marketing goes out and makes sure that everybody knows about the value, that the value has been worked on. Brand contributes to culture. Culture drives brand. And marketing needs to go out and be the megaphone, but a very, very thoughtful one. What I love about you guys, and we have a friend in common who uses you, who I think very highly of, one of my very close friends, Anna.
Well, I think what, people get confused about brand, and one of the just really simple ways that I describe it to people is brand comes first. This is the thing you do first. And it's not fonts, and it's not only, this is part of it, but it's not only fonts, colors, and design. It is a story. And the reason why it impacts culture, we actually do talk about that a lot too. The reason why it impacts culture is, and I'm a StoryBrand certified consultant. That's a big part of my background.
Awesome. Dan's a great guy. Yeah.
And if you tell the story well, you're going to capture who are the people we serve, what are their goals, what are all of the problems that they're facing in trying to pursue those goals. Why does that matter? There's a thing in there called a philosophical statement, which is really everyone planting a flag in the ground to say this is a problem worth solving. And then you talk about who you are. In StoryBrand terms, we say the client is the hero, the business is the guide who's going to help them. And when you talk about the guide, the first thing you're going to talk about is what is unique about how we solve that problem. Yes. What is it we can bring to the table that no one else can do? And by the time you get to the end of the story, you're going to give them a plan how it works. You're going to call them to action, but you're also going to talk about then what does success look like and how does this change their lives and create the kind of impact you're talking about. So if you put all those pieces together, these are the people we serve. This is why it matters. This is what's special about how we do it. And this is how we change their lives. That's a rallying cry for the team. That's 100%. Why it's so impactful for the rest of everything that's happening. And that's why and I've told people before, if you want to change your culture, take that brand story and sit with every team and every department and say, this is the story of who we are. How does this increase our sense of mission and purpose? And what clues are in here to help us do it better? And even without all the sophisticated, all the things that we know we can do in terms of HR and culture development, that alone, that catalyst, a great story, a great conversation, and the commitment to act on it transforms a culture. Yeah. So, okay, that was my soapbox today.
No, Matt, I am in profound agreement. I'm in violent agreement with you. Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And what ends up happening, and we see this, and maybe you've experienced it, right? So winners love hanging out with winners. Everybody wants to be on the winning team. So you're going to attract A players, and the people for whom that cultural vibe doesn't work, vote themselves off the island. You don't have to run around firing the people who don't fit. They self-identify, and they're like, you know what, I just don't want this. All you guys are running around being so energetic, so rah-rah-rah, I hate this. I'm finding another job. Great. We wish you the best.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing. This is how we're changing our clients' lives. And if you want to be part of that, and that's why it's not my community, it's their community, right? This is why their community works so well for them. Why we don't really have to recruit to fill our summit, because we're like, hey man, there are 50 seats, who's coming? And people come year after year after year. So, heck yes. You just said heck yes.
Heck yeah.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I guess something else that would be interesting to kind of shift the focus to is, how has that thinking about culture, how has that changed as you have grown? How has that thinking about culture and your own brand story, how has that been impacted by your growth?
What's interesting is I don't think it has, Holland, because I have this. You may have noticed I'm a fairly energetic and outspoken, outgoing guy. All three of us are theater geeks, right? And so I'm very happy that hasn't been a challenge, because we have some simple truths. And the truths that we are net givers, we are makers. All of that, those guiding principles, by the way, that I don't know if you work with your clients to enshrine guiding principles or core values as they're referred to, but those guiding principles they are what drives the cultural behavior. And if you read Mad Dog Mattis's book, Call Sign Chaos, he talks about intent and communicating intent. And that is really creating a culture of accountability and delegation with accountability. And great organizations delegate with accountability. A business with high strategic capacity is not dependent on the heroics of any one person or any one group. It is dependent on the coordinated whole. People executing processes that generate revenues. And then we can get into whether those revenues are profitable, whether they're efficient, et cetera. But they're really people executing processes to generate revenues. And that hasn't changed. And I don't see it changing. I see it being a challenge, back to your earlier question, Matt. How do you keep it together? We keep our hand on the pulse, and we're about, like I teased earlier, we're about to take that. I used these photographic terms, but out on aperture. I use that because when you open an aperture, it looks like one step, but you've actually more than doubled the size of the circle. So, or the surface area of the circle. And you mathematicians out there, you can tell me I'm wrong, but I'm roughly correct.
George, has the way you sell this program to advisors changed over time as you've scaled?
Yes. So you mentioned the difficulty of marketing earlier, and marketing is hard, and marketing is changing right now. I mean, what do you guys see? Would you agree? From my perspective, marketing is changing faster than it has in recent memory, right? And it's changing. I feel like it's changing right now as fast as it did back when we got the internet. And yeah, I'm that old, but marketing is changing very, very rapidly. So, when we talk about selling, we used to market, and we used to be, and I used to at the snap of a finger could get 100 people into a webinar. Now that has changed, not because my authority is far higher. I have a best-selling book. We have all these programs. That's great. But the audience's appetite has changed. They don't want steak anymore. They want sushi. I don't know how else to describe it. So what we do is very relationship-driven sales. Essentially, all of our new members of this community come from referrals. Do we crank out content? We put out at least three pieces of content every week, right? And they're big, they're meaty. I work hard on them, but it's leveraging the community. And again, if you think of it, it's if you have three people referring, we have a community of three people, and they each refer one, you've gone to 6. Great. When 6 people refer, we've doubled to 12 to 24. So that referral engine, and people love what they get here. They are getting a lot of value. And so, yes, it has changed. It has changed from a traditional sales and marketing engine where I'm quite strong. I'm not the best in the world, but I'm quite strong. I've built a bunch of businesses on that model. The first business that went bananas for us, I was down in Texas. We had full-page ads in the Wall Street Journal. Nobody's doing that. Well, United Airlines is, but we were buying leftover space and buying the back page of the Wall Street Journal. It was great for us, and we had a call center, and we had all that traditional stuff. That's not relevant for me anymore.
Yeah,
for others it is, but
yeah. You asked what we're seeing, and at a high level, obviously AI is scrambling all sorts of things about how stuff gets done,
and including the time to close, right? Days to close. But we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
Oh, no, not at all. But the uptake of it is consistently, almost exponentially driving a desire for human contact.
100%.
That's a great advantage for a B2B because we spend a lot of energy now trying to help people move from, and you named it well, a traditional marketing strategy to a relational one, right? It's the human touch that's going to make all the difference. So people do need the content and all that, but that we have to ask, what is the point of all the stuff that goes out in digital marketing? And it should be to catalyze moments of human encounters so that people can see you, George, in whatever forum we can find, like this podcast, like events, like conferences, wherever. But are we getting people to the venues where they can see the human behind the brand? And usually a lot of B2Bs are still founder-led. They need to know who is the human behind this big high-stakes thing that I'm going to give them and entrust them with. And so we try and get people to those kinds of moments. It's funny you say referrals. We have a new program rolling out called Scale Beyond Referrals for B2Bs because we see people reliant on referrals. And it's not that referrals don't work. Referrals do work, but on their own, they create an issue for scalability. So you want to, and predictability of growth. So if you can make the front end thing work in terms of marketing from a relational perspective and market all about a relationship-based marketing and create more human moments, you're still building a wider funnel. And then in the middle, like we said, you take care of marketing, sales, and client experience. You're creating a great journey for people in the middle that holds and deepens the sacred trust that they've given you. Then that ends up leading to more referrals on the back end.
Totally agree. And, let's be clear. If money were no object, right, and every business exists on a budget. The biggest business I ever ran, we still fretted about, or I helped run. I didn't run it. I helped run. We still fretted about payroll, right? We still had cash issues. That's why the first dimension of growth for us is predictable profits and cash flow. If money was no object, I would turn the money hose on marketing, and I would hire someone exactly like Brand 3 to get out there. And marketing is absolutely relevant, right? We just do our marketing in the kitchen sink, if you will. We are not investing because we're investing in technology and we're investing in growing the community. And so I'll leave it there. Marketing is absolutely relevant, and people would be crazy if they think that it's no longer. You know, what AI has done is people are getting their answers without going to your website, folks. And if you don't think marketing is more important now than ever, you got to sit down and take a deep think, because now more than ever, you need people like Brand 3 to help you get your message out there in a way that finds your ideal client, that helps that ideal client understand that they don't need to go to Claude or to chat to vet you out, that they need to pick up the phone and call you and say, hey man, here's what I need, can you help? And it's getting to the place where you are the person that they are going to call when they need help. And we are blessed to be in that position.
Yeah. The sort of resource issue that you mentioned is important. It's part of why we offer a lot of options for strategic consulting, to become someone's coach. That can be as valuable as anything. A lot of B2Bs operate in unique ways, limited resources, and they can do some of their own marketing, but they need the outside perspective and the strategy to make sure that it's effective. And then we have a full agency that can do all the other things, like you said, when it's time to invest in those. But the most important thing is, I think we're all learning, like you said, but whether it's gig economy, whether it's running lean and bringing in experts to help us with things,
Yep.
Any of us who are running a small business are learning to stay in our lane of where our zone of genius is and make friends for the other things, and trusted partners. This is so fun, George. I'm so glad you've been able to. I feel like we could go on for another hour easily.
I know. I'm like, what else? What do we got? This is
I know,
very fun.
right?
Thank you.
But who has the time? So we're gonna wrap up with something that we call the Behind the Brand questionnaire, because in the theme of everything we've been talking about, right? We've got to make sure, if we're doing B2B marketing, people need to meet great people like you and understand the literal beating heart behind the business. And so we've got a little questionnaire here that's just kind of fun, and lets us do that with you and lets people get to know you as they're thinking about, especially advisors as they're thinking about reaching out to you, or business leaders right now who are thinking, I got to find a GrowthDrive George Sandmann trained and equipped advisor somewhere. So Holland, you're going to kick this off. I love this.
All right.
This is fun.
This is
Let's
a
go.
fun one for a theater geek like you. This will be an easy question. What's your go-to karaoke song, or what song do you wish you could sing?
Wish I could sing. I wish I could sing the national anthem without cracking. Don't we all? My go-to karaoke song, You Never Close Your Eyes Anymore When I Kiss Your Lips. That is just, it's right in my range. I can pull it off badly, but it's where I'm comfortable. How's that?
So I've had the time of my life, Dirty Dancing. That's the one.
There you go.
Amazing.
Excellent.
That's actually quite
Excellent.
it's a fun one to sing. That's a fun one to sing, like on a cruise ship if they're doing karaoke,
Yeah.
because it's got kind of like a cruise shipy vibe. You never close your eyes.
So Dan, who runs Accounting Today, they started doing this years ago. They have a growth forum out in San Diego. And at the end of the growth forum, he has all these CPA firms, the top performing CPA firms in the country. And they know that it's going to happen. So they have a karaoke night to close out the forum. And you've got the managing partner, some of the most, you would think, harumph people out there, the most serious, and these are serious professionals. They are killer operators, but they're up there belting it out. They prepare, they compete. It is fantastic.
That's funny. Yeah, I've seen
That's
some
excellent.
epic Social Media World Conference that used to be in San Diego. Now it's Anaheim. They do an epic live band karaoke.
Awesome.
So shout out to Social Media World, I guess. I must acknowledge at this point, I'm an absolute fool. I just named the wrong song. You were doing Righteous Brothers.
I was
You've
doing
Lost
Righteous Brothers. That's
Loving
okay.
Feeling.
Yep.
You know what?
From
I've had the time of my
Top
life.
Gun.
It's kind of the 80s successor to that song.
It is. That's
how
another
I'll-
one, though. It's in the same range. I'm willing to try. Give me the mic.
That's it. These are all crowd
all right.
pleaser songs. Excellent choices.
George, what is the last thing that made you laugh out loud?
I can't tell that story. It happened up in Well, I guess I can, but I'll just clean it up just a skosh. So my friend Mike Garrison, I mentioned him earlier. He wrote a book called "Can I Borrow Your Car?" It's about referral, building a referral driven sales process. Shout out to Mike. Well, he literally lent our friend Peter his car, and Peter was like, "Well, I have to take Mike back his car," and I actually had an idea, and you can imagine it would have been a heck of a gag. To take the car back completely destroyed. Can I borrow your car? You're going to bring it back better than you took it, and this would not have been the case. And we laughed. We had a good laugh over that one.
That's great. It would be a good gag.
It was It would imagine what a teenager would leave in the back seat of your car. We were going to do that to Mike's car, but time and opportunity. So.
Oh, man. Well, all right. On to the next one. What is your favorite way to get away from it all?
So I went to law school to be a conservation attorney, a wildlife and habitat conservation attorney, and I was driven by hunting. And there we can have an ethical debate about hunting. I happen to be a very passionate hunter, and what I love the most about it, I'm also a bird watcher. And what I love the most about it is getting out and immersing yourself in the landscape, immersing yourself in the scenery, hunting and fishing. You're participating in that landscape. Happy to debate, but that's when I want to recharge. Other than hanging out with my best friend in the world, my amazing wife, that is how I really recharge. And it is profound because it is such a passion, such this atavistic passion. I'm not shy either.
No, it's good. You're passionate about lots of things, and it's really, like I said, it's very engaging to listen to you, George. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
All right. The next question is an interesting one. What smell reminds you of a specific place or time?
Fresh baked bread, childhood. Fresh baked bread, definitely childhood. And it's not that I'm a baker, but it reminds me of those moments going with my mom into the bakery. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Europe. And it reminds me of going into the bakery and we bought fresh bread every day. Their shopping model, and this is the 70s, right? The shopping model is profoundly different. But the smell of bread reminds me of home, of my mom, of childhood, of sort of all things good. That and a freshly mown hayfield has the same effect.
Great selections. Awesome. Well, what is one day in your life that you would like to relive?
Wow.
That's a big one.
That I would like to relive. I sat on the banks of the Yellowstone River in Gardner, Montana, with my 3 sons. We rented an RV, and we did a Teton crest. So we climbed and crossed the Tetons, and then we drove up through Yellowstone, and we parked our little RV. That's 4 men in a tin can on the sides of the Yellowstone, and we went for a swim, and we dragged the chairs out of the the fold-out camp chairs, and we sat there sucking on a beer. That was a truly great day. That was a really just. I'm fortunate enough to have several of those, but that's the one that just jumped to mind. I love my sons. I love hanging out with them, so that's one I'd take again.
It's cool. I actually have some powerful memories of being with my dad at Yellowstone and the Tetons too.
Awesome.
Yeah, really
awesome.
Cool. What 3 words would your loved ones use to describe you?
Glad he's dead. No. What 3 words? Passionate would probably. I'm a very good friend. These are how I hope they live like that guy. Passionate friend, and I can be. Passion has a good side and a bad side, right? So I can also be. I'm mindful not to be a jerk. Well, let's just go with passionate and friend, and you guys can fill in the blank for the 3rd one. Nobody's perfect.
So what would it mean to have truly succeeded in your work? Not your company, but for you.
Man, if we make it anywhere near, we're already having a profound impact, right? So if we can bring efficiency to the private market, and if we can bring it in a meaningful, we are already, but if we can do it for more people, And when we do it, it's not if, when we do this for more people, at some point, they turn off the Klieg lights and tell you to clean out your costume bin. And that's going to happen. And if when that happens, if I've been able to help, I know that I will have helped as many people as I possibly can. And that's profoundly important. Would I like to make a lot of money in the process? You bet I wouldn't. It's equitable. If we're impacting $1 trillion worth of the market, taking a few basis points off the top seems fair. But if we can have that profound good, if we can make all of those dreams come true, I know that sounds hokey, but we're really in the business of making dreams come true, of making people's life work, deliver for them and for their families and for their communities. And if we can do that, when we will have done that, we'll have had left a mark, had a legacy that means something. I'm just going to digress a little bit. Right when I was in the end of law school, I got to work at the National Wildlife Federation. And I had this is a small nonprofit organization. Well, it's a big nonprofit organization with a small legal staff. And as the attorney, I got handed a manila envelope, literally, with the Endangered Species Act reauthorization, their take on it. And I got to work on that. And that's the type of work when you can deliver that. By the way, it's sad, but it's true. It's still on the books. The one that we wrote, the one that I worked on, the one that I took up to Capitol Hill is still on the books today, 1992 to today. Anyway, if we can have those types of impacts, then I will have, I'll have not only lived just a great life, a blessed life, but I've left something behind that's better than I found it. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's a good thing.
Wonderful. Okay, well, first of all, I award you bonus points for the theater kid metaphors you used at the beginning of that, the Klieg lights, the costume bin. Thank you so much for that. And then,
somebody out there is going to be they're going to be on AI, like, what's a Klieg light? How do you spell Klieg light?
Yep. But now, having spent time with you, what advisor wouldn't want to work with you? You can learn more about what George is doing at growthdrive.com, but that's a growth-drive.com. That's George Sandmann with 2 N's. If you're looking up George. Anything else important I missed there, George? Contact information?
No, that's great. This has been a super fun conversation. And George Sandmann with 2 N's, you could just Google me. I'm easy enough to find if you're interested. We're here and we're happy to help. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Holland. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you for joining our conversation on how to scale a business without losing its heart. If you found this episode helpful, here are 3 quick ways you can support our podcast and share it with others. First, subscribe to the show here on this platform. Second, leave a review in your podcast app. Your feedback helps other leaders with a heart for service to find this community. And third, share this episode with a B2B leader who's trying to scale their business without compromising the quality of their services. The CEO's Heart for Service is a production of Brand 3. If you're a B2B service provider who delivers exceptional service, but struggles to get your marketing to connect with the right people, find us at brand3.net. And sign up for our Brand 3 newsletter that only sends marketing insights worthy of your inbox. Genuinely helpful stuff for the road ahead. The CEO's Heart for Service is also supported by Forge Podcast Company, a turnkey production solution for using podcasts to reach a wider audience, win new clients, and grow. Find them at forgepodcast.co.